Why would we be apologetic about it? Anyone who doesn't recognize, for example, that many of the features of our system of government find their root in Roman and Greek history is a fool. Is a fool. It's just not true. And so I think that we need to understand and embrace that, not negate it. And I think that's what we're pointing to here, is that we are concerned that particularly in parts of Western Europe, those things that underpin our alliance and our tie to them could be under threat in the long term. Our problem with the Iranian regime isn't simply, I mean, obviously it's predominantly their desire to acquire nuclear weapons, their sponsorship of terrorism, but it's ultimately the treatment of their own people. I mean, I said it in my hearing a year ago in the Senate, I say it now, I know of no nation on earth where there is such a difference between a regime that governs the country and the people who live there every single day. That regime is not reflective of the people who live in Iran, who are the inheritors of a proud and long cultural legacy and a proud history. And then you've got a clerical radical regime that has driven and taken the wealth of that country and used it not to enrich secure their people and their future, not to make sure they have enough water and electricity. They've used their money to sponsor terrorist organizations all over the world. That's what they've used their money for. So we're going to continue to consistently point that out.
Secretary, second.
I'm sorry, I got to go because I'm getting everybody today.
Regarding Europe, you said that Europe was not going to be able to mediate between Russia and Ukraine. There's been some disengagement. There's some push within the European Union to either not comply with the increase in defense spending that the United States has been promoting, or also some European countries like Spain promoting closer ties to China, or going to China, or inviting more investment from China, or even Chinese technology in critical infrastructure. Are you concerned at all about this path? And
no, I mean, the countries made a commitment in NATO at a meeting I was at, where they made the 5% pledge, which is a dramatic and historic pledge, with the exception of Spain, of course, who didn't make that pledge. And we've had no indication from any of the countries that agreed to that they're not going to do it, because it's in their own interest. I mean, it's in their own interest. Bottom line is, increasing their defense capacity is in their interest because it's their defense. As far as like opening up to China, look, one of the biggest problems Europe faces is they're being flooded with cheap Chinese goods, including Chinese cars. They're being flooded. Their own industrial base is under attack by unfair Chinese practices economically. So, I don't know what the rhetoric you're pointing to or the examples, but I mean, that's a threat that Europe faces, and they need a rebalancing as well. They're also, like we are, experiencing disruptions to supply chains and things at the economic realm that are very problematic and dangerous for national security. So we would expect them to act at their national interests, both continentally and individually as their own countries. All right, we got to speed it up. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Annalise Nielsen from Sky News Australia. In your national security strategy, you've warned Europe about civilisational erasure. When you've been watching what's been happening in Australia with the rise of anti-Semitism and our government's response to the Bondi massacre, our Prime Minister's dodged direct questions on Islamic extremism, but then unprompted evoked right-wing extremism as a threat. Do you have any message to Australia about civilisational erasure, and why is America watching?
Look, I just think it's very simple, and that is that any mass migration is highly disruptive to any country. We talked about it here in the United States. When you experience mass migration, I don't talk about immigration, I'm talking about mass migration. Okay, mass migration is a negative thing. It's not positive. And it's very difficult for any society to absorb and assume hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people over a short period of time, especially if they come from halfway around the world. There are cultural and assimilations issues related to that, et cetera. And so these are concerns that it's concerns I have about our own country primarily. It's been a priority of this administration to address this. But I think it's a growing concern in Europe. I mean, there are other voices in Europe and obviously in Australia as well that have expressed concern about this. These are facts. This doesn't make you anti-anybody. What it makes is you do have, as a sovereign country, the right to control how many people you absorb, how many people you allow in, and who those people are. This is a very basic sovereign right. Okay? It doesn't mean you don't allow any people in. There are people coming into this country every day to visit, to work, to live permanently, but you have to know who they are, and you have to have some limits and controls over what those numbers are. And obviously, because of some of the things we've seen, mass migration over the last decade has been highly disruptive, not just to the United States, but also to continental Europe, and in some cases in the Indo-Pacific as well. So I just think this is a real challenge that multiple Western advanced industrialized countries are facing, and I think it's pronounced in parts of Europe as well, and obviously, at least on the basis of your question, appear to be a challenge as well in Australia. All right, to the next row. Yes, ma'am. Are you not? Hold on, Andrea, right behind you. I'm going to get to everybody. Go. Yeah.
Oh, I just wanted to ask.
You don't have a question? Okay, no, I'm kidding. Go ahead.
On Ukraine this weekend, the meetings with the Ukrainian delegation and the U.S. delegation, are you planning to participate?
It's
in
in
those
Miami.
meetings?
They're starting today and tomorrow. I may be there tomorrow for a portion of it. There's another one happening today, but that one is with the Turks and the Qataris and the UAE on the Gaza plan. So if I'm not there, because I have things we have to do here today, like talk to you guys, I think tomorrow, since it's in Miami as well. So, yeah, go ahead. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Timothy Onorezi with the Washington Examiner. Going back to the previous question about Europe, and I believe the Sky News reporter referenced civilisational erasure, which is a term that has been used by both the White House and the State Department. Both the White House and the State Department have made kind of recurring overtures to Europe as a civilization that is in some sort of danger and that should join with the United States as a sort of Western civilizational bloc. And it seems to be a recurring priority. However, with the release of the National Security Strategy, many European leaders, leader of Germany, members of the EU, of the European Parliament, have found it totally unacceptable or offensive or question the allyship of the United States with the rhetoric that was used. So I just wonder if the United States is correct in that these policies like mass migration will lead to civilizational erasure. Is it possible to save European civilization if the governments simply don't want to be saved?
How has this alliance long been described? As the Western alliance, right? What is it that, and it's not just me saying, you go to these NATO meetings, you meet with people, what they will tell you is our shared history, our shared legacy, our shared values, our shared priorities. That's what they talk about as the reason for this alliance. Well, if you erase your shared history, your shared culture, your shared ideology, your shared priorities, your shared principles, then you just have a straight up defense agreement. That's all you have. So what I'm trying to point to, and what we've tried to point to, is very simple. That is, at the bedrock and at the cornerstone of our relationship, with example with Europe, is the fact that we do have a shared culture, a shared civilization, a shared experience, and shared values and principles on things like human rights, on freedom, on liberty, on democracy, on all sorts of on the rights of the individual, on all these sorts of things that we in this nation are the inheritors of in many cases, because many of these ideas that led to the founding of our country found their genesis in some of these places in the Western Alliance. If you take that away, if that's wiped out because for whatever reason it's no longer a priority, I do think it puts a strain and threatens the alliance in the long term and in the big picture. Now, whatever internal politics causes people to dispute this, I'm not going to comment on, other than to tell you that I do think that at the core of these special relationships we have is the fact that we have shared history, shared values, shared civilizational principles that we should be unapologetic about. This is a nation that was founded on Western principles. Founded on Western principles like liberty, the value of and the right of the individual, the right of self-governance. These are all Western values. Now, others may have adopted it in different parts of the world, but they emanate from Western history. And it's something that we should be unapologetic about. Why would we be apologetic about it? Anyone who doesn't recognize, for example, that many of the features of our system of government find their root in Roman and Greek history is a fool. Is a fool. It's just not true. And so I think that we need to understand and embrace that, not negate it. And I think that's what we're pointing to here, is that we are concerned that particularly in parts of Western Europe, those things that underpin our alliance and our tie to them could be under threat in the long term. And by the way, there are leaders in those countries that recognize that as well. Some say it openly, some say it privately. In the eastern and southern part of Europe, they're much more open about it. Nonetheless, it is a factor that needs to be addressed.